Hi Krishna, welcome everyone. I hope you've had a wonderful morning so far, and it's good to have you back on. It's a good sign that you're all here ready for part two. So I thought I'd start off with a quick recap for last week. It would be very quick, so it may seem like we're rushing through things, but if it is something that's just gone over your head, don't worry, it's there in the recording from last week. So we're talking about creation from the perspective of the Srimad Bhagavatam or from the Puranas. Okay, so I'll just start off quickly with some prayers. Om Jnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Guru Dinatarinam. Okay, so we'll just have a quick recap of level two. So we were going through at different levels. So we covered creation at a very basic level, just the three Vishnus. And then we went on into level two, which was a little bit more detail between the stages of, when the Vishnus are appearing. And today we'll go on to level three with a bit more detail as well of how things are happening. So what did we cover last week? So in the material world or in general creative aspects, there's two types. There is sarga, which is a primary creation, and there is visarga, which is secondary creation. So the primary creation is done by Lord Vishnu, is done with, he creates all the material elements and matter, and then Brahma takes those different elements and matter, and then he creates the different planetary systems. So if we just take a look at what's next. So we've got the spiritual and material worlds, and we were discussing how the spiritual world is there eternally. It's never destroyed or created. It's just there. It's been there since time immemorial, and it will always be there. And then below this red line, we've got the material world, meaning the worlds that are created and destroyed time and time again. So this world that we're living in currently, we understand it to be the material world. And you can see because there is birth, death, old age, and disease. It's created, it's there for a while, then after a while it dwindles and then it's destroyed. So when we're talking about creation, we're talking about everything that's happened on the lower part of this particular thing when the motion is set in for the creative aspect. Okay, so we'd heard about the Vaikuntha Loka, so this is a spiritual world, and in a in one tiny little corner or a speck in the spiritual world is a dark cloud, which is where the whole creation starts to happen. So it's described that Krishna, he expands himself, he lies down as Lord Vishnu, as Karno Dakshai Vishnu or Mahavishnu, and as he lies down, many different universes come out of his pores. So when he breathes out, when he exhales, out of every single one of his pores in his body, a universe comes out, or a golden egg comes out, which is known as Brahmanda, which is known as the universe. And then from that, then he expands again and he enters into every single one of the universes. This is Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And from this Vishnu, a lotus stem comes out and a lotus comes out and Brahma is born. So Brahma is the first living entity. We can see Lakshmi Devi here as well. She's eternally his consort. And especially here in this particular picture, we can see her eternal services, she loves to massage Lord Vishnu's feet. So that's where she is. So just a reminder, at this point, there's actually no planets or planetary systems. There's no Earth, no demigods, there's no humans being created yet, no animals, plants, trees. It's just Lord Vishnu, Lakshmi, and Brahma. And the universe is half filled with water. And the third Vishnu has not yet expanded out of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. So this so far is a primary aspect. And now that Brahma has been created, you can see that the secondary aspect will start. Okay, so here Brahma comes out of the lotus stem and then he takes charge of secondary creation. So when he's born, originally it's dark around, he can't see anything. He goes down the lotus stem, he's searching for something or, the purpose of his creation. He doesn't know, then eventually he comes back up to the lotus stem. Along his journey back up to the lotus stem, he hears the word tapa twice, which means austerities. And once he's before he starts his austerities, he's empowered within the heart to know, what austerities he needs to do, what mantras he needs to chant. And then Lord Krishna gives the entire knowledge of the Vedas and everything he needs to know through the sound vibration of his flute, which goes into his ear and into his heart. And then at that point, Brahma can look around and he sees that he is connected to Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and he's huge, he's massive. But then he starts to understand his purpose and his role of things to do. So there's just a few pictures of the same thing. So then this is that one universe. If we look at one, there's multiple universes you can see in the background. So in that one universe, Brahma creates the entire 14 planetary systems that are there. So you can see all of them here, and they rest on the lotus stem of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. So you can imagine how huge, how colossal it must be. And where are we? So whenever you see any map, it's always good to know to start off with, where am I? They always say, you are here. So this is where we are. We're here on the Earth planet. And this is an entire planetary system, meaning there's the Earth globe, and then you've got all the other, 9 planets that we learn about at school. Jupiter, Mars, Venus are all here within this region of the Earth planet and within the sky and space of the Earth planet. Anything above that is not actually been recorded by science. They haven't mentioned anything. They haven't quite got there yet. It's just another picture to show that all the planetary systems are resting on his lotus stem. So you have 6 upper planetary systems. It's not just a single planet, the planetary systems. You've got Earth in the middle, and you've got your 7 lower planetary systems. And then at the lowest point, you have the 28 hellish planets, which is the last planetary system that is there. From Brahma, he's told to populate the entire universe. He creates the 4 Kumaras that you can see over here. They refuse to populate the earth. They're like, no, we want to stay as ascetics and we'd like to stay as small children. And Brahma feels a little bit upset because they're not following his order as their father. And so as that anger represents itself, Lord Shiva comes flying out of Brahma's head. And Lord Shiva in Earth is called in the universe is called Rudra. Rudra means one who cried out piteously, because he comes out and he's crying and he's like, "Why am I here? What's my purpose? What do you want me to do?" So that is how Lord Shiva enters the world, and this is how the common concept of Trimurti comes about. So we've got Brahma, who is there as a secondary creator, but we commonly hear him as the creator. But when we go into more detail, we can see that he's the secondary creator, not the ultimate creator. And then Lord Vishnu has now expanded himself into the 3rd Vishnu, the Shirodakshaya Vishnu, Kirodakshaya Vishnu, Paramatma, Super Soul. And he's there within the heart of all the living entities, and he's there within the atoms. And then we've got Lord Shiva as well that's appeared into the world. So then they look after creation, maintenance, and destruction together. Okay, so this is one of the material worlds, the material universe. And as we know, it's created, destroyed, and created again. So then we'd heard that Brahma continues populating the universe, all the different places. He regularly explains to Narad Muni what's going on, how he does stuff. So Narad Muni and Brahma here are having have a conversation about creation. And this is in Canto 3, you can hear about it. So I found this interesting slide for you to look at. So when Brahma does creation, it shows about, how the categories are split up. So he creates plants which are immovable, explains the characteristics of this particular type of creation. So, their consciousness is not there. Their nourishment is upward. They take things from the root and it goes upwards. And, all the different types of species of plants that are there are explained here. Then the animals, the different types of animals and how they're put into different categories, are they 2-hooved, 1-hooved, etc. And then the different types of human beings and demigods, which are included in the human being category as well, but they're known as like advanced human beings. So it's all described in detail in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and we've got the demigods, forefathers, etc. all over there. So that's Brahma's creation. He creates the demigods that perform different roles in the material world. One of his sons, Kashyap, has many wives, and they create all the different species that are there and give birth to them and populate the universe. So these species don't just exist there on Earth, it's described that they are there in other planetary systems also. So last week we also went through time. So time is important so we can understand that creation, when is the universe destroyed? When is it created? What's the timelines? And we broke that timeline down a little bit into the different yugas or the different time eras, if we describe that in English. And it describes that how each time era is, how long it is. And we're currently in Kalyug. We're kind of about 5,000 years into Kalyug. So we have another 427,000 odd years left. So when you always hear this doom and gloom, the earth is going to end, you have all these predictions that we hear in the media from maybe different other schools of thought of, other world views. According to our calendar, we still have 427,000 years left. And even then, usually when Kalyug finishes, there is a small destruction, and then Satyug then Satyug starts again. However, during this particular period, there's going to be no destruction. At the end of Kalyug, a personality called Kalki Avatar is going to come, and he's going to reset everything, and Satyug will start. So that we don't need to worry about any of the doom and gloom, destructive type aspects. So humans lived for different periods of time during these periods, naturally, because the period is longer, people lived for longer. And we can see even in Kalyug that generally the lifespan used to be 100 years, and that is reducing very drastically. And there's different processes in which to worship the Lord in the different periods of time. Okay, so this time in the Vedic perspective is not linear, it's circular. One period ends and it comes about again, just like the seasons and the daytime. Okay, so if you want to see things in a bit more detail, I think we won't have so much time to cover that today. If those of you who've got Keshav Swami's book, Bhagavata, there is this diagram that is there. A lot of these slides actually belong to him. They've been created by him, so I don't want to take credit for that. So these are his slides and a diagram that is there to break down the time scale. So here we can have a look just to see how to read this. We've got Kalyug, Dwapara Treta Yug, Satyug, and 4 of them combined makes one Divya Yug. And then within Brahma's day, there are many cycles that happen. So this whole cycle happens 1,000 times, and that makes up one day of Brahma. And the day is also split into 14, so different personalities come and look after things. And then in total, Brahma lives for 100 years, celestial years, and which is in a total of 311 trillion years is the life of Brahma. So I recognize I'm going through this pretty quickly. But we'll take questions on. Actually, maybe we'll take some questions on this now before we go into level 3. So this is just a verbal breakdown as well of Brahma's time. Why do we need to know this? It's because when Lord Vishnu, right at the beginning, Karnadakshaya Vishnu, when he breathes out, and all the universes come out. So the duration between when he breathes out, exhales, and when he inhales, 311 plus trillion years pass by in between, and that is how long a particular the whole creation is in existence. Yep. So yeah, that's that. So I will take any questions that there are at this point before we go any deeper into this topic.
Actually, can I just ask you to repeat the book that some of the slides came from, please?
Yeah, it's from book Bhagavata. I'll write it in the chat. It's by Keshav Swami. There is a free online version as well, but if you're like me, you like a physical copy of a book, you can find it as well. Book Bhagavata. So book Bhagavata is very nice. It summarizes the entire Bhagavatam in the usual Keshav Swami style. He has an acronym for the entire canto. So, can you imagine that for Bhagavad Gita, we had one chapter that was put into an acronym. He puts the entire canto into an acronym. So if you can remember the acronym, you can actually say, yeah, I know what happens in Canto 1. And you can just explain it very quickly, even though there's like 30, well, the first canto's got 19 chapters in it. So with all the different cantos, you can just, from one acronym, you can kind of recall what the content is. Okay, any other questions?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I have one question
Sure.
regarding the planetary systems. The lower hellish planets is there, right? Their Pitraloka is there.
Yeah.
So can you please explain about that? Because Pitraloka, why it's a hellish? Because there are Pitru Devatas, we say, and we offer annually some food or other prayers. Then why it's considered as a hellish planet?
So it's described actually when you do further reading and you read the Acharya's commentaries that there's actually two different types of Pitraloka. There's one which is there in the hellish region, and there's one there which is in the heavenly region as well. So depending on the activities of the personality, that's which region they will go to. But especially the one in the lower region, it's described that there's no food or water available there. So basically, this is the reason why it's important to do the Shraddha ceremony to offer ancestors food at least once a year, because once a year here on Earth is once a month in Pitralok. So that's why we do these shroud ceremonies, to ensure that our ancestors are fed should they be in that region. So there's a whole discussion that we can have around that, like, oh, how do we know if they're in the region, if they're not in that region? The point is that as grahastas, it's our duty to do offer that shroud ceremony regardless. We don't know if they're there or they're not there, but it's our duty to also perform our activities that we're supposed to do as personalities. So I hope that's okay, Ravinda Prabhu.
Yeah, that leads to another question, because whoever dies, they take birth again, right, in some other form. Then
I didn't hear what you just said. So, say that again, sorry.
Once a person dies, he takes birth somewhere else.
Yeah.
Then why this Pitraloka concept is there? Because definitely they're not going to stay there, right?
Yeah, so it's an interim period where we stay. So everything, when we go into spiritual life and we learn it, the topics go deeper. So the Gita covers things to a certain level, and then that topic goes deeper. So it's described that the soul doesn't immediately go to the next body. Sometimes you have to go to an interim period, maybe to suffer some activities that we did, especially like when a person passes away and they're not a pure devotee, there's actually 13 days that are there in between. And it's also dependent on our desire. So ultimately, Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, we hear that we've got free will, and we have a desire of certain places that we'd like to go. According to our activities that we do in our life, we'll go to those particular places. So Pitralok is described to be a place that some people desire to go. You know, it says there in the Gita that Dhyanti Deva, Vrata Deva, whoever you worship, that's whose planet you go to. So there's people who worship their ancestors, so they end up on the ancestor planet. You know, hoping to be reunited with their ancestors. But it's also like hellish region is for those people who really have, performed a lot of sinful activities. But Pitralok isn't necessarily considered to be a hellish planet. It's a region where there are other hellish planets, but it's not necessarily considered to be a hellish region. So I hope that helps.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
Lisa Mataji.
So Hare Krishna Mataji, even as Vaishnavas, should we do the offering as well? Because
yeah, there's a huge debate about this that goes on in ISKCON, and we do have a big discussions. But according to, if we read Bhagavatam in a lot of detail, we should perform our duty, because as Vaishnavas, if we're a pure devotee, then everything is fulfilled and everything is done. But we're chanting and we're doing offensive chanting, not necessarily we're chanting and getting the full glory of the holy name, because we're still, we're sadhakas. So it's described that we should, as grahastas, we should do our duty in that way.
Okay,
and also,
thank you, Mata.
It's actually wonderful because we'll offer prasad, we'll offer prasad to our ancestors. So, Prabhupada was always very, and Lord Chaitanya, their mood was always like, feed everyone prasad. So why wouldn't we feed our ancestors?
Okay, thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so I think we can move on to the next level. Is there any other questions, Prabhu? Do you have any questions, Dharmendra Prabhu?
Yeah, I've got one actually. I thought because we're late. Basically, when you leave your body, if you're going to go to the hellish planets or any other planets other than the spiritual world, what happens with the Paramatma? Because if you're going to, let's say, the hellish planets, does the Paramatma come with you as well?
Yeah, I think we've spoken a bit too much about the hellish planets. Actually, there's so many different regions. The hellish is just one tiny fraction region. So the Paramatma travels with you and stays with you always until you reach the spiritual world. So he's always there with you. He's your guide, he's your buddy, he's your best friend, as he says. He's a silent observer, but he remains with you on your journey away from the spiritual world until you get there. So imagine how loving how God is. He's just like, yeah, you wanted to leave, that's fine. I've created all of this for you to have fun and, enjoy separately from me. But you know what? I'll join you just in case at one point you decide to turn around and acknowledge me, and I'll be there for you. That's what a best friend is. So he definitely fulfills the role of a best friend.
Okay. And the second question that I thought of was that because there is so much confusion particularly with Hindus, due to the fact that the way they grow up, they always think that Brahma is the primary creator. I think you did explain, but why couldn't Krishna just create, and therefore when the creation happened, you wouldn't have this sort of the four Kumaras. It would just be populated, if you know what I mean. So why did that need to happen?
So, Krishna couldn't just do everything himself from the spiritual world. He can just wink or, just wave his hand and everything could be done by himself. But it goes back to our nature. We love to serve. Even now we're serving our families, we're serving our work, our bosses. We have this mood of wanting to serve. So there's so many living entities in the world that like to serve in different capacities. So that's why we have all these different demigods that want to take on a certain role to do. And Krishna's like, okay, well, if you want to do that, here you go. You can be the boss of the universe. And that's what Brahma is. He's a universal manager.
Okay, thank you very much, Mataji.
Yeah, and these confusions exist due to lack of knowledge. Growing up, that's what was taught to me. I didn't learn anything further. But if we just literally just go away and do a little bit more reading, it's there in all the Puranas. So it's the fault, I would say, of our community, in the sense that we don't, not the ISKCON community, but in general, the general Sanatani community, that there's not a real emphasis there of studying our scriptures and learning from the source so that all the full information is available to everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so level 3. Let's get to it. I will do this slowly because obviously I've done the previous bit very fast because we were just doing a recap. So level 3, we'll look at the same topics again, but we'll look at each thing in a lot of detail. So what I'm going to go through now is a lot of things that happen before Garbhodakshaya Vishnu appears, so before the Lord expands into Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. So I'll start from the beginning, but just bear that in mind. I will let you know at which point Garbhodakshaya Vishnu appears, and that will be near the end of the presentation. Okay, so we've got Vaikuntha Lok, and also when I say this, it is still very simplified what I'm teaching. It can go into a lot more detail than this, but I'll explain it in a very simple way. So here we have Vaikuntha Lok. Okay, and there is a dark cloud in one of the corners of the spiritual universe. So before, as I had mentioned, Lord Krishna expands himself as Mahavishnu or Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and then the whole creation is put into action. Okay, so now what I've just said, remember that, but now understand that I'm going to go into a bit more detail of the process, that the in between Krishna expanding as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, what actually happens. So whenever it's, we hear this like concept very quickly, that very often that Krishna is God at play, when he's playing, he's having fun, he's a cowherd boy, he's playing with the gopis and the gopis, he's taking the cows for graze, and the spiritual world is all about the fun and relaxing and having a good time and serving one another and having loving exchanges. And I'm sure you've heard of the concept of that Vishnu is Lord Krishna, but at work, how he would act when he's in the workplace. He's got his suit on, he's doing all these different activities and all these kind of in that kind of way. So we can look at the Prime Minister or the President, when they're out there, they're officially wearing their suit and tie and they're speaking, but at home they might be giving a back ride to one of his kids or rolling around on the floor and having fun with them. So whenever there's any work to be done, we always hear it's done through Vishnu. But if we look at it into a bit more detail, it's actually done through Balaram. So when Krishna's first expansion is actually Balaram, Balaram is actually non-different to Krishna. The only difference between the two is the bodily hue. So Balaram is of a whitish color, and obviously his dress is slightly different. Otherwise, he's also known as, Supreme Personality of Godhead. That doesn't mean there's two gods. There's still only one God, but it's that same one expanded to perform different roles. So anything to do with creation is actually done through Balaram. So Lord Krishna is not directly responsible for the spiritual or the material verses. He does it through his incarnations. So the entire function, creation, maintenance, etc., is carried out by his first immediate expansion, which is Balaram. His energy is a source of existence. He's the one who is responsible for the innumerable spiritual world, the planets that are there in the spiritual world. The residents, the palaces, the forests, the clothing, all the paraphernalia. We know it to be Balaram. And so this is the reason why we're always very careful with all of Krishna's paraphernalia. So anything that is that is used for the Lord, that's why we make sure it doesn't touch the floor, or we don't put our feet to it. We don't touch it with dirty hands. We wash our hands. If we've been eating and things, we wash our hands. So coming from the mridanga to the kartals, which is why we try not to put them on the floor. We try to put them in a higher place, so that it's not touching the floor where our feet have been walking around, because it's known as Balaram. It's Balaram's energy. So all the paraphernalia are considered non-different to him. That's why if we accidentally knock an instrument or a book, we always try to, offer our respects to it. Okay, so if we go into a bit more detail, so Krishna has expanded as Lord Balaram. So now Balaram's going to take care of everything. So this Balaram, he expands into 4 personalities as Vasudev, Sankarshan, Anirudh, and Pradyumna. So these are known as the Chaturvyuha, or the 4 primary expansions of Lord Balaram. This Sankarshan personality then expands. So this is still here in the spiritual world. Okay, it's not in the material world. This is in the spiritual world, and these personalities are there eternally. So when I say he expands, it doesn't mean that they didn't exist before. They're always in existence. So Sankarshan expands as Narayan, and then from that Narayan, the same, you've got this quadruple expansion. It's called, they expand again. So you have your Vasudev, you have your Sankarshan. This is the second Sankarshan. He's also known as Mahasankarshan. And then you've got Anirudh and Pradyumna. So this is known as the second quadruple expansion, or the second Chaturvyuha. And their primary responsibility is to take care of the spiritual world, all the different corners of the spiritual world they take care, and they have different roles and responsibilities that they do from there. It's from this Mahasankarshan that the 3 Vishnus that create come from. Okay, so first you have your Karnadakshaya Vishnu. From Karnadakshaya Vishnu, he expands, and Garbhodakshaya Vishnu comes, the second Vishnu, and then we have our third, which is Kshirodakshaya Vishnu or Shirodakshaya Vishnu. So the 3 Purusha avatars is at this point that you've got the material creation, that they're acting within the material creation. So when I say Krishna expands into Lord Vishnu, there's a lot that was missing in between. So all this happens in between. Where are they? I'll show you them quickly here. So, we've got Goloka Vrindavan, where Krishna is. Then you've got Dwarka within the spiritual world, Ayodhya. And then you've got your first quadruple expansion. You've got Vasudev, Pradyumna, Anirudh, and Sankarshan. And they're within the middle part of the spiritual world, in between. Then when they expand, if you follow these lines down, they come into the wider Vaikuntha planets. And you can see them over here. The second quadruple expansion, you've got Vasudev, Pradyumna, Anirudh, Mahasankarshan. And as you can see, this point hasn't happened yet. This material world hasn't appeared. From this Mahasankarshan comes Karnadakshaya Vishnu. So whenever it's time to create the universe, from this Mahasankarshan, we have Karnadakshaya Vishnu that appears. Okay. So if there are any questions, please just raise your hands. And Dharmendra Prabhu, I can't see everybody because obviously I'm looking at the slide. So please just shout out when there is a question. We'll just stop at that particular point and then move on. So here we've got the spiritual world. You've got all the Chaturvyu expansions in between. We've got Mahasankarshan in between. It's not illustrated in this picture. and then you have your Karnadaksha Vishnu, from which where creation stops. So that was just a different, so you can see the picture differently. I'm a visual person. I like beautiful pictures. So when I see pictures, it helps me understand things a lot better. Okay, so now what's going to happen? Now we're going to hear about the creative process. So the material world the material world have not been created yet. Mahavishnu is laid down into this ocean, Karnadaksha ocean, which his sweat. He's laid down and he's in this sleep. I know Ravinda Prabhu asked a question last week about where is Sheshanag or Anantashesh. So I asked I asked my seniors over during the week. He is there, he's there in a subtle form. That's why you can't actually see him. He's physically present. You can't see him because he's in a subtle aspect. Okay, so when
So Mataji, you mean to say even in causal ocean that Seshanag is there in subtle form?
Yeah, he's there. Yeah, he's there in a subtle form.
Okay.
He's always there supporting. He's none other than Balaram. So he's always there to support the Lord in any services that need doing, either as his bed or, as his clothing or in somewhere or another, but he's there without fail. Okay, so now Mahavishnu is here and we hear that he breathes out and these universes or bubbles come out of his pores. So that's what we're going to look at in detail. And once you hear about this in detail, we will corroborate it with scientific theories that are available out there today. So we've got Mahavishnu, he breathes out. And when he breathes out, there are golden eggs that come out. It's described it's like a shape of an egg and it's a golden color. So in Sanskrit, they call it the Brahmanda. So Anda means egg, Brahma, the one that comes from, not Lord Brahma, but from Supreme Personality of Godhead, like Brahman. So Brahmanda. Okay, when this golden egg comes out, it goes into a far distance into this black cloud that you can see here is known as Pradhan. Okay, and we'll speak a little bit about that as well. So these eggs, they slowly drift and they go into this Pradhan. Okay. So Mahavishnu is lying in the spiritual causal ocean with his exhalation. Many universes come out of his pores like little seeds. They have the form of golden eggs. Where is that written? That's written in Brahma Samhita. And they move towards the Pradhan. Okay, so hopefully I've still got you all with me. What is this Pradhan? So the Pradhan is the subtlest form of matter. So all of the elements that you can think of, fire, water, air, ether, false ego, intelligence, the three modes of material nature, everything that exists in the material world is what the Pradhan is. And everything is there in a subtle form, meaning that it hasn't taken its gross form. So for example, I could say with earth, like I'm holding this, I can touch it, I can feel it, I can hold it. It's there, but in a subtle form. Okay, and they are undifferentiated. So it's undifferentiated sum total of all material elements. So when we say it's undifferentiated, meaning that each element is on its own. So we've got earth on its own, we've got water on its own. It's not mixed. They're not mixed together. In today's world, when you've got water, it's mixed in with so many other different minerals and elements, things like that. It's not just water on its own. So it's unmixed. So you've got your false ego there in unmixed stage. You've got fire there in unmixed stage. So just imagine all these elements are there, but in unmixed state, and they're not acting. So that's what the Pradhan is. And it's good to understand what Pradhan is because everything now we're going to see in the material world has been created from this. So what are the characteristics of Pradhan? It's unmanifested, meaning it's avyakta. It hasn't actually manifested yet into its full material form. It's eternal, okay? It's the aggregate of the three modes. So you've got the three modes are all there, but they're not mixed. So we hear from Bhagavad Gita, the later chapters, that in the material world is a mixture. It's like a rope, right? So you've got the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, and they're kind of like twisted in a rope, and they're all intertwined, and they're always race for prominence. There's a race for prominence. So mode of goodness wants to become stronger or whatever, but still it's very mixed. So here you've got the three modes, but they're separated from each other. They haven't mixed with each other. Pradhan is a cause of Prakriti. So Prakriti means the material world, material nature. and it consists of many things. There are many things that are there in this pradhan. It's the cause of everything and it's the effect of everything. It's undifferentiated, yet it has a variety, meaning that it's unmixed, but there's so many different varieties of different material elements that are there. Okay, and the things that come from that pradhan, you've got your 5 gross elements, which are, fire, water, air, earth, ether. You've got your tanmatras, which is your subtle elements, such as sound, form, all of those kind of things. You've got your 10 senses. And you've got the 4 antahakaranas. So the antakarana is the inner organ of the mind, the thing that helps you think, and your existence, your thinking, willing, feeling, and anything to do around thinking and the kind of how can we describe it? So for a computer, you've got your hardware, so all the subtle software that is there that is required in order for the laptop to work, for example, is known as the antakarana. So the mind, the intelligence, the false ego, and the citta. Citta is the atma that is there. So that is what pradhan is. So we have just described this area where these golden eggs have gone into. Okay, so what happens is, as these golden eggs go into that dark region, or we call it the dark region, I'm just saying that when they go into the pradhan, they start to become covered up by the layers of the elements. Okay, so you've got your golden egg in a naked form, just a golden egg. But as they enter into the pradhan, which you'll see over here, as they enter into it, they slowly get these elements that are added onto it. So you have your fire, water, air, ether slowly start to get added onto this egg, and they have wide layers. We'll just go back here. So it says here, by creative desire of Mahavishnu, when those golden eggs come out of Mahavishnu, enter into the unlimited accommodating chamber of the limited potency. So this is Brahma Samhita's, very complicated language. Ultimately saying when it enters into the pradhan, unlimited accommodating chamber of the limited potency, they become enlarged by the great elements. Okay, and each layer is 10 times larger than the previous layer. Obviously, in order to encapsulate it onto a page, it was very difficult to do that. So you've got your golden egg. This layer is 10 times wider than this. And sorry, apologies, I was not able to draw this diagram very accurately. And then this layer is 10 times larger than this layer. This is 10 times larger than this layer. So the layers are just thicker and thicker and wider that are there. Okay, so as these golden eggs enter into pradhan, they grow in size. Why do they grow? Because all the elements get stuck onto all the different layers that are there. Think of it like an onion, right? So when you're peeling an onion, there's so many different layers, and then you finally get that little ball in the middle. I'm not sure, as devotees, we don't really have so much experience with onions, especially if you're born in a devotee family. But anyway, so they're just layers on there. Okay, so now everything is undifferentiated and everything is unmanifest, meaning they're not in an active stage where they're doing anything, and everything is separate. Okay, so what makes it actually get activated is described that the Lord's glance, so Garnadakshay Vishnu glances over at the pradhan, he just looks at it, and from that look, it starts to become activated. That glance of his is none other than Lord Shiva. This is not the Lord Shiva that we described that comes out of Brahma, out of his forehead. That's known as Rudra Shiv. That Lord Shiva is part of the material world to do his activities as an entity within the world. So that's why we refer to him as a demigod. So even Kshirodakshay Vishnu is ultimately referred to as a demigod because they have a role in the material world. If they've got roles and responsibilities in the material world, they're referred to as a demigod. So this Lord Shiva that we're talking here is none other than Narayan himself. So he's known as Shambhu, and it's described that he has a golden halo coming out of his personality, out of his transcendental body, and he's not the same as the Lord Shiva, as in you can see his complexion here is golden, whereas the one here on earth is like a kind of reddish, darkish kind of complexion. So it's a slightly different Lord Shiva, so we have to understand this is an expansion of Sadashiv, the eternal Lord Shiva that is there in the spiritual world. So Lord Vishnu's glance is Lord Shiva. And the reason for this is that Lord Krishna or Vishnu never directly engage with material activities. Anything to do with the material world is done by Lord Shiva and by Durga there. So here, or Parvati, or the kind of Maya energy. So when it comes to touching all of the universes, even glancing at it, it's not done by, it's done by Mahavishnu's expansive energy of Lord Shiva. So this glance is known as Shambhu. And this glance is what impregnates all of these universes with, we can call this Maya or this material world or Prakriti with different things. Okay. Right. Before I get into that, do we have any questions?
Can I just ask you, sorry, Mataji, is that the reason why a lot of people worship the ling, because of that, what you just said?
Yeah, so the linga is described to be a symbol of that of creative aspect in the material world.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a representation, it's a symbol. That's what the word linga means, symbol.
Okay.
Okay, so any other questions on that? Everyone good? Okay. Okay. So Lord Vishnu needs a glance. That glance is Lord Shiva. What does he inject into the material world through his glance? So just so you guys know, so that whenever anything is done in the material world, it cannot be activated or done without the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this glance is the everything. The glance is the thing that sets everything in motion. And anything that's happening now from this point onwards is done by each time Lord Vishnu glances at it. It doesn't happen automatically. All right. So the first time Lord Vishnu glances, he glances and the jivas are put into the material realm, into the material world. So this is just talking about it on the level of the soul, not their bodies. Okay. So where are these jivas coming from? So after the last destruction, all these jivas or these personalities, they were actively playing a role. Now they have their karma to go through, they have to be born again and things like that. But everything's been destroyed. So these jivas are there in a dormant stage within the body of Mahavishnu. So at this stage now, the Lord is glancing through, and it's done through Lord Shiva. So the jivas are injected into the world. Karma is injected, their particular karma is injected into the world. So everything that they had done in the material world, all the balances are there. And Swabhava, their natures are also injected into the world. Okay, so by the Lord's glance, he impregnates the material universe with the living entities, the jivas. The personality Shambhu assists the Lord by transferring the jivas into Pradhan. So that's why the Pradhan is known as Parvati or Durga or Maya. So it is Lord Shiva that contacts Durga in order to impregnate all of these personalities. The Lord himself, meaning Mahavishnu, does not touch the material nature. He does so via Lord Shiva. Yes, Leeta Mataji.
Sorry, Mataji. So does that mean that we carry karma over from the last universe as well? Whoa. Okay, thank you, Mataji.
So it's carried with us only up to the point of when we enter back into the spiritual world, meaning that we've become pure devotees. Otherwise, it's always with us. If we have a karmic balance, it travels with us in our subtle body, which is always with us. So we've got our gross body, which is the body that we can see, and our subtle body is like our mind, intelligence, and false ego. So that travels with us, and we have that layer, that subtle body with us, covering our soul all the way until we become pure devotees, and then we shed it. And then once we've shed that, then we can go into the spiritual world. So our karma will travel with us. So for example, we've got one life, we die and we're born again, and that karma travels with us. But what happens when you still haven't finished your business and it's destruction? Destructions happen, everything's been wound up, and it's like, hey, wait, I haven't finished my business. I gave people £1 million over the years, they owe me £1 million, so I need to be born again in order to receive that. People, whether it be pious credits or bad credit, the point is that people want to enjoy, so they still have that balance left. So then it comes with them. Okay, any further questions?
No, thank you, Mataji.
All right, so these aspects have been injected into the world, and I'm explaining this very simply to you, that each thing that as it goes in, it can be described to a lot more detail, but that's like level 5, level 6. I don't even understand that, so I won't even go into that. I leave that up to the experts that we have in our community, like Karthik Chandra Prabhu or Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, and so many other personalities who are experts in this topic. So I'm an amateur in this topic in comparison. So okay, so they're injected into the world, and each time the Lord is glancing and he's injecting one of these aspects into it, time is also there. So it's the influence of time, that actually transforms this pradhan. So this pradhan is described that as soon as it's got injected with the Lord's glance, it starts to vibrate, or it starts to activate, or starts acting to do something. It's not just there in its individual state. So then it becomes known as the Mahatattva, which you may have heard of before as you've gone through the creation process. So the pradhan and Mahatattva are ultimately the same thing. The only thing is that one is inactive and the other one is active. And how does it become activated? By the glance of the Lord when he's injecting the jivas and also injecting time as well into these universes. Okay, and once again, these slides are, another devotee slide. So, they're beautifully done, expressed in a very good way, but it's not me. I haven't created them, so thank you to them. All right, so now let's look at the same thing, but we're going to look at it in a diagram form. Okay, so we've got Karna Dakshaya Vishnu, right? And he glances once, and when he glances, time enters into the pradhan, and the jivas, the souls, enter into pradhan. Okay, so once he's glanced, this material nature, or this pradhan, where everything is inactive, it turns into the Mahatattva. So originally when it turns into Mahatattva, that's when it becomes activated and things start to happen. Then when it splits, it's predominantly the mode of goodness and the mode of passion are there at first, when in the sequence of events. So everything's going to expand from there now. Right? So predominantly goodness is there and passion is there. Then after that, ahankar, or false ego, or the mode of ignorance becomes very, very predominant, more so than anything else. And then from this ahankar, from this false ego, come the 3 modes that we see in the world today. So goodness, passion, and ignorance. And I will speak about this later on, about how false ego, it covers everything that we do in the material world. Even if we think that we are in goodness, we are still tainted by ahankar, or false ego. And it is the biggest thing that binds us here to the material world. So when we can shed that false ego over time as devotees, we are doing ourselves the greatest favor, because this layer is that first layer that's in there. So I like to describe it as, here I'm wearing glasses, right? But imagine that it was like pinkish. There were pink tinted glasses, rose tinted glasses. Everything that I would look at would have a pinkish hue. So it means that everything we do in the material world is tainted by false ego. And that's what will keep us here in the material world. So next time somebody gives us feedback or says something to us or does something we don't like, and immediately we erupt, we have to check ourselves and think, hang on, this reaction is what is keeping me here in the material world, and I don't want this. So, and I'm not talking about if someone's mean or horrible. I mean, just our day-to-day, even as devotees, we can just be very intolerant about things that are going on around us. And it's, whether it be physically you express it, or whether it just be your thoughts in your mind, then it's that subtle form of false ego that is there. So I just wanted to point that out, and we'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards. So here we've got ahankar, and then we've got the 3 modes, and these 3 modes come through that false ego aspect. Right, so let's look at that now in a bit more detail over here. Right, so we've got the ahankara, so predominantly in tamas, so mode of ignorance, the false ego. Then through that we see the 3 modes as we see in the world today, and that's why it's not Shuddha Sattva. So Shuddha Sattva is considered to be pure goodness, And that's when you're on a transcendental platform, and that isn't tainted by any of this. So you've got goodness, passion, and ignorance. Now, when all of these things are combined together, through goodness, you get the next level of, we won't worry too much about this, we get the next level. So through false ego, tainted goodness, we get the mind, and we get the 10 sense devatas, and we'll look at that on the next slide. These are all the demigods that create, that are in charge of like the eyes and the ears and things like that. Then through this false ego and passion, you have your prana, or your life energy, the thing that gives you, allows you to breathe, the life air that rotates around your body, your 10 senses, including your intelligence. So bear in mind that where's your intelligence come from is come through false ego tainted with passion, and then that is what our everyday intelligence is. So pure intelligence is only what we read from the scripture. Our own personal intelligence that we're walking around with, that is our own thoughts and opinions, are tainted with this false ego and passion. And then we've got ignorance. So what comes through the mode of ignorance? You have all the 5 elements and the 5 subtle elements. Let's just look at that on the next slide. So what are your mind? So you got your mind and your 10 sense devatas. So the devatas are these personalities. So you've got Surya, Vayu, Ashwini, Kumaras. So these personalities are responsible for the senses. And what sense are they in charge of? You can see over here. So your prana, your life, and your senses. So here you've got your senses. These are created through the mode of passion. And then here you go, you've got your 5 elements and your 5 subtle elements that are created through the mode of ignorance. So sound, touch, form, these are subtle ones. And you've got your gross ones over here. Okay. Okay. Now I've blocked this out with the black square because none of this has been created yet. So none of this exists. Okay, you've only got your shell of a universe, your golden egg, and you've got these layers. Remember these layers that I said that are added onto the golden egg. You've got your earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. To get out, let's speaking from a spiritual perspective, to get out the material world, the last layer is false ego. Right, so if you want to break out, if your soul wants to break out of this universe, you go through all these different layers, and the last layer is false ego. So that we have to remember that covering is that final thing that keeps us here in the material world. So if we want to break out that layer, we need to destroy that false ego, and it'll happen gradually through our chanting, through our reading of Shastra, through kirtan, through association with devotees, following the process. Eventually the Lord, gradually the Lord reveals these things to us. We start to recognize this false ego within us, and we can start working on it and making a concerted effort to not be so affected by things that are happening to us in our life, because we understand that everything is tainted by false ego. Okay, that's just a practical tip that's there in terms of looking at creation and how it affects us on a daily basis. Okay, so yeah, there's a material universe, and these are all the layers outside it. There's nothing inside the material universe right at the moment. Okay, so we're still here at primary creation. Garnodakshaya Vishnu has not expanded into Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. He is yet to enter into the universes. And these universes remain floating on the causal ocean for 1,000 years before any activity takes place. So before the glance of Lord Vishnu on these universes, they're just floating around in the causal ocean. Okay, so at this point, I'll take if there's any questions, and then we can take a short 5-minute comfort break, and then we can come back to it.
You want to raise your hands if you've got any questions. Mataji, when we go back to the diagram, you mentioned the first expansion, which is Bolram. Could you just show me that on that particular diagram? I couldn't see it at that point. Where you got Bolram and then all the other expansions subsequently.
Yeah, sure. I'll show you. Just bring it up.
If it's got it, that is. while we're waiting, does anyone else have any questions at all?
This one?
And also, if I could ask, if on that particular slide, why is there two lot? Why is there a need for the two of the same as well? If that could be explained, like the Vasudev and Goshen, and you've got the secondary. What is the reason for both of those to happen
Yeah.
again?
So that's the question I've had as well for a while. And it's slowly being unraveled. Like it is with spiritual life, you kind of understand things a lot deeper. So I can only give you a very superficial answer currently, is that the Lord expands in terms of whatever is needed. So it's described that these four, they uphold and take care of everything in the Goloka Vrindavan region. Okay. Then the second, they uphold and look after everything within the Vaikuntha region. So and not only that, they expand again 24 times. So this is one expansion, that's the second
Right.
expansion. Then from that, there's another 24 expansions, and they've got different roles and responsibilities of looking after things in the spiritual world. So it just goes back to that there's requirements of, some sort of maintenance or looking after or taking care of certain things that are there in the spiritual world.
Right. Okay. Okay. And that's slightly confusing as well, in the sense that why would you need something to be looked after in the spiritual world if it's the spiritual world? Because there's no sort of attack from somewhere else, or everything happens due to Krishna's presence. So that's a little bit of a confusion why you need other entities. So this appears to be, sorry, if I can just, this appears to be like the demigods at the moment having some sort of right over making sure everything happens quite well in the material world. So I just can't understand why you'd need the same for the spiritual world.
Okay, so let me give you an example, right? Krishna is independent, right? He doesn't need to eat or drink. So why does Nanda Maharaj have so many cows in the spiritual world? Why do they milk the cows? Why do they feed Krishna when he doesn't need anything?
It's part of the pastimes, I suspect.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's not like something to, Krishna needs food, he needs nutrition, that, that he needs to drink milk or he needs to be fed. He doesn't need any of that. It's part of the Leela, it's part of the, he's being maintained. Why does it need maintaining? It's not the material world. That maintenance is just loving pastimes. The purpose of it is different in the spiritual world than it is in the material world. So whatever we see in the material world exists there also in the spiritual world, but in a non-perverted, here it's a perverted reflection. So everything goes on there in the spiritual world. When I say maintenance, it's not like something's going to be destroyed. They're just there looking after things, like why do we need Jay and Vijay? Why do we need guards at the gates of Vaikuntha? We don't need that. Like no demon can enter the Vaikuntha planets. But it's there, it's the variegatedness. That's the thing about the spiritual world, is that there's a variety. There's so many things going on in the spiritual world. Loads of people have roles and responsibilities. And the Lord himself, expands himself. It's described that the Lord joy increases more and more the more he expands himself. So it's just for his fun, for him to have fun and be, surrounded by opulence and things like that.
Thank you, Mataji. I can't see any hands raised.
Okay,
so
great. So what we'll do is
must...
we'll take a quick 5-minute break then, and then we'll come back and then we'll continue from where we've left off. And if while everybody's gone and some questions pop up when they're back, then that's also okay. So we can reconvene at 11:10. Okay.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
So are there any questions at this stage before we go up into descriptions? No, okay. So we'll carry on. So we're still at primary creation. Karnadakshay Vishnu has not expanded into Garbhodakshay Vishnu. He hasn't entered the universes. So between the time when Lord Vishnu breathes out, Mahavishnu breathes out, these universes, they remain floating on the causal ocean for 1,000 years. So what happens during that 1,000 years? Why is nothing happening? So remember, everything's in a kind of unmanifest state, and it's not active. They're not mixing with each other or anything like that. So what happens is the demigods, that, you remember I said through the mode of goodness, the demigods were created, the 10 demigods who are they're described as the primordial demigods. These demigods are different to our daily demigods that we see in the world today. So these are described to be the Prakrita, or the primordial demigods created by the Supreme Lord. They're not created by Brahma. Brahma will create another batch of demigods that is here to run the world. So who are these personalities? You've got the Dig Devatas, Surya, Vayu, Ashwini Kumars, Varuna, Indra, Upendra, Agni, Mitra, Prajapati. These personalities pray to the Lord that, we're all here and all of these personalities say we're all here in an unmixed state, and we can't activate, we can't get on with anything, we can't do anything. So please, can you, allow things to happen? So what are those 23 elements that are there in a mixed state? We've got Mahatattva. Remember, Mahatattva is none other than Pradhan, but activated. We've got Ahankar, which is false ego. We've got the 5 subtle elements: sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. We've got the 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. We've got the 10 senses. So what are those 10 senses? Ears, eyes, skin, nose, tongue, hands, feet, voice, anus, and genitals. And you've also got the mind that is there. So the activities are suspended. The controlling deities that we've just spoken about, they pray to the Lord that, please, we can't do anything without you. We need your mercy. We need to be able to interact with one another. We need to perform an activity. So it shows in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am the ability in man, or he's the ability in everybody. So can you imagine, these demigods are there and they may be so powerful, but they're unable to do anything. So they're praying to Mahavishnu and saying, look, please, can you, help us? We've got this material world to create. We can't do it without you. You've created us, but there's some activities we need to do. So Mahavishnu responds by sending in his cohesive energy. So this is the cohesive energy which allows them to start activating and interacting with one another. And then at that point, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu enters each and every one of the universes. So the time between the golden eggs coming out of the body of Mahavishnu and Garbhodakshaya Vishnu entering each universe is about 1,000 years. So you can see that here. So now he's entered into the universe, and then, Brahma's born from there. And then we hear that Brahma meditates for about 1,000 celestial years also before things are put into action in the one material universe. Okay, so here Garbhodakshaya Vishnu enters in each and every one. So at this is a stage of primary creation, and still secondary creation hasn't started yet, from everything we've been through to the new stuff, level 3 stuff we've been today. So yeah. Right, so then we hear that Brahma meditates for 1,000 years. He splits his lotus, and then your higher planetary system in the middle and lower, and other personalities come to help run things. And then Brahma creates the second batch of the demigods, which they get on with stuff in the material world. Right, so any questions on this? If not, then we're going to go on to the science aspect. I mean, modern day science. I mean, this in itself is, Vedic science.
Actually, are the primordial demigods created in the spiritual world? Or are they in the material world?
The primordial demigods, they're created. So the causal ocean has been created, and that at that point it's the material world. So it's in the material world.
Okay.
Yeah, but they do exist already in the spiritual world, but in this spiritual form. So these personalities are always there in existence as living entities, like we would be if we were in the spiritual world. But it's when they perform their role, it's at that point they enter into the material world.
So that would mean that they would have to go through karma, etc., if they're born in the material world, if they're in the material world.
Yeah, I mean, the primordial demigods, some of them, like a lot of these are roles that they're playing. They're not necessarily personalities. Like, so Indra is a role. So multiple personalities at different points will take on that role of Indra. So each living entity, they would start their karma if they were here in the material world. The ones in the spiritual world are the pure ones, but when certain personalities need to perform a role, then that personality would come down, and then they would, you know, perform their activities.
Okay, thank you.
Bit hard to get your head around, even it boggles my mind also. Okay, so now let's have a look at the scientific aspect. Right now, recently, I mean, we've been saying from Vedic science for many, many thousands of years, we've been saying there's not just one universe, you know, there's multiple universes, and we were laughed at, we were called it's mythological, it's too far out there. But as modern day science is developing more and more instruments, gross instruments, to be able to access further parts of the solar system or the universe, the sky, you know, the solar sky, then they're starting to get more information, say certain things. So recently, over the last 4 to 5 years, the scientists have said our universe is but one in an unimaginably massive ocean of universes called the multiverse. Yay! It's very exciting when I find very excited when the scientists catch up and then they say something. We're like, yeah, we've been telling you for such a long time. You should just listen to us in the beginning. So you know, and this is how they've drawn them. They've drawn the universes like this. You know, this is how they kind of express that. You know, they've got loads of different universes there. So they're saying that our universe is one in many in a massive ocean of lots of universes. Okay. And then this is how we express it Vedically. Yeah. Right, we have Carl Sagan, who's an astrophysicist, who's no longer in the world today, but many years ago, he was saying the Hindu religion is the only one of the world's great faiths dedicated to the idea that the cosmos itself undergoes an immense and indeed an infinite number of deaths and rebirths, so creation and destruction. Is the only religion in which the timescales correspond to those of modern scientific cosmology. Its cycles run from our ordinary day and night to a day and night of Brahma, which is 8.64 billion years long, longer than the age of the Earth or the Sun, and about half the time since the Big Bang. Okay, so these are modern day scientists who are, you know, looking at our Vedic science and, you know, expressing an opinion about it. Manu Smriti says Earth is more than 4 billion human years. Science says it is 4.54 billion human years approximately. And this is this is a geologist, Arthur Holmes. He says, long before it became scientific aspiration to estimate the age of the Earth, many elaborate systems of the world chronology has been devised by the sages of antiquity. The most remarkable of these occult timescales is that of the ancient Hindus, whose astonishing concept of the Earth's duration has been traced back to Manusmriti, a sacred book. What does Stephen Hawking have to say? He says, events before the Big Bang are simply not defined because there's no way one could measure what happened at them. These had to be imposed on the universe by some external energy. So he's saying there's some external energy that came and imposed this Big Bang that happened. It didn't just happen just like that. There are many speculative proposals regarding the original of the Big Bang, quantum fluctuation, big bounce, multiverse, quantum gravity loop, blah, blah, blah. None of these have any evidence yet. Okay, so it's important to understand the language as well. So Big Bang theory, I mean, it's a theory. So sometimes we take theories and we take it, you know, the modern day world, we just hear we forget the fact that it's got the word theory in it, meaning it's an idea or a concept that hasn't necessarily been proven. So it's the same with evolution. All of these things are theories that are not necessarily proven. You know, we still haven't seen today a gorilla turn into a human being. So that's one thing to have a look at. But let's get into this. So how do we, you know, how do we corroborate the Vedic text to the Big Bang Theory? So it's not that we are using the Big Bang Theory, modern day science, to prove what's in the Vedas is correct. It's the other way around. Because remember, for devotees and for those people who are Sanatanis, the scripture is the Shabda Brahman. That's the final truth. It's the ultimate truth because it's not man-made. It's Apurusheya. And then we can look at science and think, okay, yeah, well, science is saying the same thing. So it's in that direction, not the other direction. But our own particular faith, sometimes it helps us if there are some doubts that we have in scripture, or we're not quite sure, or some things seem very far-fetched to us. It helps us to kind of get more faith in the scripture when we can see that, you know, science is coming up with the same thing. Right, so let's look at this step by step. So this is how creation happens according to the Vedic understanding through the Pradhan. So there are unmixed elements. So this is everything we've just been through today. And total material elements are contained there. There's a void, there's no space at that particular time. No time. So we hear that Mahavishnu injects time afterwards through his glance. Okay. Now what does, and it's indescribable. It's in so much detail that it is so hard to fully describe it properly. So it's indescribable. Now let's look at the concept of singularity or the Big Bang. The concept is that there's no formation of matter or space. Okay, but we're saying that, you know, the elements are there, but they're unmixed. So nothing's been formed yet. All matter condensed in a small point of zero space. So we've got our egg, a single egg, and is condensed. The energy is condensed in a small space, and that is also the vision of Mahavishnu. There's no time, and cannot be described by any mathematical or physical model. Right, so how do things begin? The Vedic texts say, time is injected, the Pradhan is agitated, and creation begins. And that happens through the glance of Mahavishnu. The cause, what's the cause of this? Time is injected by the glance of Lord Mahavishnu or Shambhu, Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva. By glancing, the Lord also injects souls with their respective karma. What does the Big Bang say? Time starts and then the process begins from the Big Bang, they're saying. The cause of it, the cause is admitted as unknown by modern science. And in terms of that, it's not applicable because modern day science doesn't take God into consideration in that aspect. So what happens next? Vedically, there is an interaction of the modes of nature and subtle elements are manifested. False ego, sky, air, fire, water, earth then comes out. Big Bang Theory is saying nothing on that. They don't have anything to say on that. But what they do say, that there was an infinite small point, there was space, gas, light and heat, water and soil. How does that matter transform? Oh, we've just been through that already. Got the slide twice. Okay, so how can we understand it visually? So if we look at our diagrams, that golden egg was it was huge. Golden egg is there, and then it enters into Pradhan, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So that goes back to the scientific understanding of singularity, that, you know, things were there condensed in a very small space, and then a big bang happened. So what is that big bang? Is that small thing expanded a lot. It expanded to huge amounts, which made the world today. Now, if we're looking at timescales, the Lord breathing out and between everything being destroyed is 311 trillion years. Now, if we look at the, when the Lord is there and then he glances after 1,000 years, this whole process, if we recorded it on a video in slow motion, we'd be dead. Obviously we don't live for that long, but if we were there existing and able to view all of this and we did it in fast motion, it would look like it was a big bang. Meaning that it went from nothing to lots and lots, and it's huge, and you got your today's universe. So when you think about it from that perspective, we can corroborate it with science and say, okay, yeah, the Big Bang Theory is there, but we wouldn't necessarily call it a bang, but we would say, yeah, from a small space, things kind of exploded, and in the sense that not that it blew up, but it just became bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, so I would like to stop there on this point and just get everybody's views and thoughts. I know Martin Prabhu and Ravinder Prabhu were talking about this in their breakout room last week and stuff. How do you feel about what you've just heard? What are your thoughts?
Okay, Lisa Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, it's just really interesting that so much of it is also being presented in modern science. I remember a few years, this is probably about 10, 15 years ago, actually watching a program, I think it was The Universe, and it was an updated series, and they actually proposed the theory that in the beginning as well, that there was primeval waters. That's the first time I've ever heard that in modern science. And it's just, hold on a minute, where has this one come from? But I no doubt this also been influenced by Vedic text. What was the other thing that I was going to say? Oh, Mataji, on one of the slides, you said that there was void, but no space. I didn't quite understand that. Sorry.
So it just meant that there was, for example, how like space, another word for space is ether. So there wasn't any ether either, like the element of ether wasn't created. So there was no formation of matter, meaning that matter didn't come together and create anything. And there was no space, so there was no ether. So at the point where Mahavishnu is there with all of the different, universes and things, space hasn't been created yet.
Okay, thank you, Mataji.
Thank you for your contribution, Lisa Mataji. Martin Prabhu?
I'm just struck by how rich it is. How much imagination it takes to connect with it, rather than sort of cold scientific facts, if that makes sense. It's a lot more engaging than the sort of material scientists, a very mathematical, very sort of arid exploration, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin Prabhu. So in terms of science and maths, it's also everything, all of this is explained in mathematically also in the Surya Siddhanta, which is another scripture. And that entire scripture is just based on the size of different planets and the distance at how far it's away, and like quantum theory. And they use maths to explain the whole of creation as well. So I'm more of a Leela person. So for me, Bhagavatam works better because it's like, my brain is not so mathematical and scientific in that way. But for those whose minds work like that, like for example, imagine you're going through life and you've always been like a modern day scientist and you don't necessarily believe in God. And so all of this doesn't seem that good for you, but you're mathematical and you're scientific in that way. You could read Surya Siddhanta and be like, okay, yeah, they can slowly start adding God into the picture. And this is why Srila Prabhupada really did want us to look at this creation topic and not ignore it too much. He said not to go too much into detail of it because it's known as one of the trappings of the Bhagavatam. We can become so absorbed into how the universe is being created, we can actually forget what the purpose of the Bhagavatam is, which is to connect with the Lord and go back home to Godhead. So it's not a problem if we don't fully understand this topic. It can be quite out there. But if you're someone who needs this in order to understand things in a Sankhya way, so Sankhya is like metaphysics, it's like tell us all the makeup of the world so I can understand the makeup of the world and then understand my role as a soul and how to get out of this world. So it's a different way, it's a different way of thinking. But Srila Prabhupada said this topic was important, and that's why the temple of the Vedic planetarium is also important, because those who are modern scientists but are atheists, then they can also start taking steps towards gradually having faith with something higher. So that's why the TOVP is something that Srila Prabhupada really wanted. And there's many scientists out there that are not necessarily atheist, but majority of them are. So it will help them along their journey, which I think is great. All right, anybody else would like to add anything or ask any questions on this?
I was wondering, Mataji, only because I was reading Krishna book last week, and in chapter 2, it says Krishna is the absolute truth because, unlike relative truth, he's the truth in all three phases of eternal time. Time is divided into past, present, and future. Krishna is truth always, past, present, and future. In the material world, everything's being controlled by supreme time in the course of past, present, and future. But before the creation, Krishna was existing. I'm trying to understand that. What was the nature of Krishna existing? What was Krishna doing before the creation? I mean, apologies if you've covered this already, Mataji, and I've just kind of missed the subtlety.
No, it's fine. I think it's a brilliant question, and we will look at the slide again. So I had a verse last week that I had up, but I don't have it with me today. But it's Krishna talking to Brahma. So, Brahma asks, okay, who was there? In this same question, they got asking, where, Brahma's asking, why does it happen? Brahma's asking, why does, what happens before creation, before I was there? What was going on during that particular time? And, Krishna nicely answers, and then he says this verse in the Bhagavatam. Let me just actually, I'll tell you the verse number and you can look it up because I don't have it with me. It's 2.9.33. And it goes like this. Aham evasam evagre nanyad sad asat param. Paschadaham yat etacha yo vishishye sosmi aham. So he's saying, before creation, it is only I that existed. And when creation is there, it is I that exist. And after everything is destroyed, it is I that exist. Okay. So this question you were asked is wonderful, right? So what was happening to Krishna when there was no material world? Okay. So if we look at this, so remember everything we've spoken about creation is this bit here, this bottom bit, this material world, okay, where the universes are created and destroyed. But we have this whole other area, the spiritual world or the kingdom of God, which exists eternally. It is eternally there. There are jivas, there are unlimited amount of souls. It's described that the amount of species or souls that are here on the earth is just a tiny speck of compared to the number of jivas that are there in the spiritual world. So the spiritual world is there all the time. Krishna's there, the cowherd boys are there, Lord Vishnu is there, all the different avatars that are there. They live eternally there in this spiritual world, in a spiritual planet. And there's certain activities that are going on every day. There's exchange of love, there's service in the 5 different ways, either in a neutral way, either as a servant, either as a friend, either as a lover or a parent. So this aspect is there all the time. And this is the bit that is always hard to comprehend because we're in the material world and we're conditioned in a way where we're like, okay, I had a beginning, I was there in the beginning, and then I lived for a while and then I died. And then I thought, then my soul came back to the world again and it lived again. But even that is hard for us to understand that you might have had a previous life. So for us to think that there's a place that exists that's there eternally, there is there all the time, and there was never a time that it wasn't there. There wasn't a beginning. There's not going to be a middle and there's not going to be an end. It's there eternally. It's hard for us to comprehend. So here Krishna's talking about, when he's talking in the verses that you've just read, Krishna is just chilling. He's hanging out with his Gopa friends and all of that in that spiritual realm that is there all the time. This world that we're in is only here temporarily. When Krishna descends on earth, so when Krishna comes down here on earth and he performs activities, he has expanded himself from the spiritual world to be here on this material earth for just a short period of time to say, hey, you were there in the spiritual world, you belong there, but you said you were going to go and you wanted to enjoy separately, but it's time to come back. It's like when our child leaves home and they're under 18 and they've run away from home and we're like, listen, you wanted to go out there, you wanted to explore, you wanted to do your own thing, come back home now, please. You'll remind them that, hey, I exist too, your home exists too, come back, please, you don't belong here. So that's why Krishna descends into the material world. When he says in the Bhagavad Gita, yada yada hida masya, whenever there's a huge increase in irreligion, when he needs to come down and remind everybody again. So that's when Krishna is here in the material world. So sometimes when we read Krishna's pastimes, we think that they're just when Krishna descended here on earth and he did a few things. But he's existent eternally. His pastimes are going on eternally there in the spiritual world. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Mataji.
Okay, so that's a brilliant question because in my eyes, that's what puts all the jigsaw together. That's what put all the pieces together, is like, what was happening before. And I think even amongst our devotee community, this question comes up like quite a lot, the whole Ram and Sita pastimes. It's like, how could Sita be separated from Ram? How could Ram, do this to Sita? But we need to understand that Sita and Ram are eternally together there, here, right here in the spiritual world, in this place here. Whereas Yodhadam, Krishna? Yeah, there's Ayodhya right over here. They're eternally together. So when they're coming down here on earth, they're performing, they're like actors. They're doing some, acts. They become separated. And, Lord Ram and Sita are eternally together. They've just come here on earth to perform some leelas, some pastimes. They get separated for a while. They come back together. But ultimately, in their relationship, they're eternally together here in the spiritual world. So once this concept or this understanding of the spiritual world is there, everything starts to make sense. So the Lord comes here temporarily to perform some activities and pastimes when people are forgetting about him, and they're forgetting actually we were only meant to be here on earth for a little while, but we were meant to go back. Okay. Any further questions or thoughts on this?
Hare Krishna Mataji, you very well said that we delve into these topics, right? Creation, it's very we will lose in this absorption. It happened to me also many times. I get very much interested in these topics and forget about the actual goal of Bhagavatam. And comparing this with the scientific, their understanding this and that, so much interest in this rather than understanding actual, our relationship with Krishna and focusing on how to grow in spiritual life. Thanks for reminding.
I do that regularly as well. I have to be reminded that, hang on, this is not the goal or the purpose of what we're supposed to be doing. It's just one of the things, it's in one out of the 12 cantos. It's one of the cantos, and even then, it's just a few of the chapters. It's one of the topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's 10 topics, and it's one of the topics. So yeah, it's important we don't get lost. We don't get lost in that.
But
okay.
It's so fascinating, like the way it's described. All the elements and so many details, right? Even if we say that's a little details given there, it's so much fascinating compared to any other scientific research or any other knowledge.
Yeah, definitely is fascinating. So it's definitely not a topic to be ignored, but it's just about, don't let it be a distraction in your spiritual journey. So it's wonderful. If it helps your faith grow, then it's good. It's good to go ahead. Right, just some other interesting facts I thought I'd share with you of stuff that's in the Bhagavatam that modern day science also, has come across. So also in Canto 5, we hear about cosmology. So I haven't covered cosmology so much. We just literally just touched upon it. And this illustration is there to describe some of the chapters in Canto 5. So it's described that there's a Shishumar, or there's a dolphin. There's loads of different constellations. So these are all the stars and planets and different things like that. And then on the top of this, you can see this bright light over here is described to be is Dhruvalok, or the North Star. And the North Star is, the biggest star in the sky that's always fixed in one place. And all the scientists, all the sailors and stuff, they know their directions of where they're going based on, they look at the North Star. So it's that one star that shines the brightest and doesn't move, that's in the sky. And you can look out for it, tonight on a non-cloudy day, look out for the brightest star, and it's always in that same place. So it's described in the Bhagavatam that, there's all these planet constellations are together. These are some of the luminaries, and it looks like a dolphin. And this dolphin is described as Shishumar, or one of the expansions of Lord Vishnu is expressed in that way. So, and it's described that though there are many personalities out there that don't necessarily, the impersonalist school. So I'm not talking about the Mayavadis, I'm talking about the impersonalist school of thought, where they believe that, yeah, God is the source of energy and light and things like that, but he's not necessarily a person, or he's not there in the spiritual world and performs all these activities. They're not quite there yet. They're still on that journey. So they can understand the Lord by looking at this Shishumar in the sky, within the sky, and understand all the constellations come together and they make the shape of this dolphin, and they meditate on it. So the impersonalists will meditate on it, and then eventually they get elevated to Paramatma realization and Bhagavan realization. So it's there in the sky and they meditate on it, and it's described in detail that, you know, these sages, they meditate on this dolphin within the sky, and they understand it to be Lord Vishnu and things like that. So, you know, if I was to say to you all, you know, there's a dolphin in the sky and we should meditate upon it, it may not go down that well, and you're like, where is this dolphin? I can't see it. But let's have a look. Has science found it? This is a picture from one of the observatories. So I've got an observatory here as well. So here's an observatory, and they have seen it. So if you look carefully, this is the mouth of the dolphin, and this is like a dolphin shape over here. So this is exactly how it's described in the Bhagavatam. It's a dolphin shape. All the luminaries rest on this body of this dolphin, and all the different planetary systems are contained within the body of this dolphin. And there you go. You can actually see it like that. It's very beautiful. And then you can see this Bora Bora as well, the northern lights kind of shining through as well. So, yeah, there is a dolphin in the sky. We just can't see it. And then the Saptarishis are the 7 saints that we see. Modern day science calls, or cosmology calls that the Big Dipper. So it revolves around the pole star. So we've got the pole star here, which is the North Star. In our scriptures, it's written about as Dhruvaloka. And there's this kind of shape, which is described all of the different sages, where they are, what their position is described there. And it's described that these 7 sages, they rotate around the pole star. So here's a big Dipper, and it revolves around the pole star. And that's also covered in cosmology. Okay. So my concluding points are, I just wanted to say that, you know, if it is hard for you to understand, or for you to hard to comprehend, we don't need to panic or worry or think, you know what, I'm not going to go back to Godhead, because it is just one of the topics, and it's there for us to, like I said, for those of us that have that Sankhya metaphysical type consciousness, where we kind of need to understand the breakdown of everything. And when I say that, like, for example, you know, there's a cake, I give you a cupcake. And if I showed you, okay, this cupcake is so beautiful and it's so tasty, and I would say to you, okay, do you know how this is made? And then I'll show you that there's flour, there's sugar, there's baking powder, there's milk, there's all these different ingredients there. And you look at all these different ingredients, and when I combine these ingredients and I put it in the oven, it produces beautiful cake. And then when you're eating that cake, you're like, oh, okay, now I know how this cake is made. So that's what Sankhya Yoga is, which is described in the Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, that it breaks down. So we understand, you know, I'm an Atma, I'm a spirit soul, and this body that I've got is made up of all these different elements, and they're combined in this different way to produce this type of body for me, and for the animals, this type of body, for the plants, this type of body. And ultimately, these are all different types of bodies, but the thing that runs it is the soul. So this is known as Sankhya, or metaphysics. So if you have that sort of mentality, then it helps you understand or get faith in God eventually, and helps you get faith in the scriptures too, because you can understand it and you can see the world as it is. And I have many friends that are like that, who were atheists, who weren't convinced about God, and actually they read the Bhagavatam in a mood of challenge, that we want to challenge that there's no existence of God, but actually it turned out the other way, that they read it and they were like, wow, this is so much detail that we wouldn't have got from anywhere else. But the ultimate reason why this is put in is that it helps us understand the greatness of Krishna. Okay, so we on this earth, sometimes we think we're great, and then if you look out, then there's other people that are there in the world, and they're within this one house, within this one city, within this one country, within this one planet, and then you've got all these other planets that are out there, and now we know we're not the only universe, there's many of universes. It makes us understand that Krishna is the one that holds this all together. He says, you know, it's like pearls upon a thread. That's how he maintains everything. So we understand the greatness of Krishna. We understand about the insignificance or the smallness of ourselves, and it allows us to have faith in philosophy, which leads to greater bhakti, ultimately. So, yeah, those were just my concluding points on the topic of creation. I try to do my best to explain it There's probably a lot more questions, and the more you read into it and go deeper, there'll probably be a lot of questions there on that. I may not be able to answer them. I probably won't be able to answer them. That's why I point you in the direction of like Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, Keshav Swami, Kartik Chandra Prabhu, and all these personalities who have studied even the Sanskrit down to a detail, so they can give it to you to a much deeper level of explanation. So yeah, back to you guys. Any questions? Anything else that needs clarifying? We still have another 10 minutes, so we can go through a few more things if you need to.
Okay, if you've got any questions, please raise your hand. I'm sure you must have. Come on.
What I would say as well, like Kartik Chandra Prabhu, when he teaches about creation and cosmology, there's actually a verse there in the Bhagavatam that explains that these topics cannot just be understood by anyone. You actually require some transcendental scriptural kind of qualification to be able to understand it. And it happens gradually. Like the same topic I read 10, 15 years ago, and it didn't make any sense to me. And over time, through the mercy of devotees and the mercy of my guru, I've been able to understand it gradually. But even then, it's very small compared to the bigger picture. So I would say it's like it just unravels over time. Krishna helps you, gives you the intelligence by which you can understand these different topics, not just creation, but so many topics that are there in the Bhagavatam. And each time, it goes deeper and deeper, you understand it, the levels more, and the penny drops, and you're like, oh, right, yeah, that's what it meant. Like, for example, many people know that we've got the gross body, we've got the subtle body, and we've got the soul. And, despite reading so much and studying the scriptures so much, I hadn't actually understood that when it says that we're not this body, that includes a mind, that we're not this mind either. And I was like, do you know that we're not this mind? And they were like, everybody else around me was like, yeah, of course, because we're not this body. It's part of the subtle body. And I was like, I only just got it, that I wasn't this mind. And it helped me so much because I could just distance myself from all these unnecessary thoughts that would come and go. And it's only from that, like, when an advert that I saw on this mindfulness app, that you have to just see the thoughts coming in and out of your mind, like traffic that's traveling. You have to kind of detach yourself from it. So when we are sometimes thinking these terrible thoughts and you're like, I'm such a bad person, why am I thinking like this? And you're like, no, I'm not my mind. My mind, you can do what you want, but I'm not associating with you in that way. So yeah, things like that become unraveled, and you start to understand things a lot better in that way.
Okay. Mataji, you mentioned on the final time, Kalki will be coming along, and you also suggested that the Earth will stay as it is. But from an upbringing, again, there's many times that you hear that there will be dissolution at some point, and Kalki will come in on a white horse, etc. That's also, from my understanding, in the Christian faith as well, that there will be someone coming on a white horse, which will be the savior. But I couldn't quite understand that the world will not be dissolved, because I thought the whole process was that for Satyayug to start, you had to make sure that Kalyug is finished.
Okay, so so things work in cycles, and there are different periods of time when destruction does happen. So it happens sometimes, not always. It's not always necessary. Okay, so like, for example, within a day of Brahma, so day of Brahma is here, this is a life of Brahma. Within a day of Brahma, Brahma's day is split into 14 different manvantaras. Okay, so it's described that, like, for example, a Manu, like Manu means the head of mankind comes, and he looks after things, and he looks after them for 72 cycles of this. So it works out for about I think about 306 million years. And then sometimes in between, there's a destruction if it's required. or it's not major destruction, it's a partial devastation. So there's many different levels of destruction. So for example, there might just be a flood, a small flood that happens in order to just kind of help the earth kind of rejuvenate itself. And in Christianity, we hear that as well, because at school we always learn about, Noah building the ark and there being a big flood, which is very similar in Sanatani philosophy as well. Within we hear about Matsya comes and there's a boat and, everybody gets on that boat. So, we hear that Noah builds a boat, and we don't hear it in the philosophy. In our philosophy, we hear that, Matsya comes along with a boat. So it seems like Matsya asked Noah to build a boat, and then everybody gets, and then Matsya brings that boat along and everybody gets on that. So we can look into it in terms of names and things like that. But the principle here is that at that time there was a devastation, a partial one. It was a small flood, just the earth. The other planets were not destroyed. There was just an inundation of the earth. Yeah. So sometimes a partial destruction is required in some of the regions, but not always. But at the end of when it's Brahma's day, so this is Brahma's day, he's doing all sorts of things. There's different manus that come at different times. Within each manu, there's all these cycles that take place. Now, at the end of some cycles, there is a full destruction. Like, for example, at the end of Brahma's day, let's just say Kali Yuga has just happened, and it's right here at the end of Brahma's day. Brahma's night, he sleeps. So during this time, there is a devastation of all the lower planetary systems. So the planets below us, Earth, and some of the higher planets, and then your Janalok, Tapalok, Mahalok, that bit is not destroyed. So at that point, there's a full destruction, well, not full destruction, there's a partial destruction that takes place of all the planetary systems. So that's why sometimes we can confuse it, is that, oh, in some places it says there's a destruction, but here we're not hearing that there's not a destruction. So it depends which Kali Yuga it is. In our Kali Yuga currently, we're only in the 7th Manvantara. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're here. We're right in the middle of Brahma's day. So it's described in the scripture also that we're actually in the 51st year of Brahma's day, right? So in Brahma's life, we're in the 51st thing, and we're in the 7th Manu. And we're in the 28th cycle of this Divya Yoga. So therefore, there's no destruction due because it's not time yet. But if I was in the 14th Manu and it was the last Kali Yuga, yes, there'll be a massive devastation that would happen at the end. So I hope that helps understand why sometimes it seems like there's a destruction, sometimes it's not. It depends where you are in the timeline.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. Does anyone else have any questions at all? Okay, Lisa, Mataji.
Krishna, sorry. Mataji, could I just ask for some clarification on manifest and unmanifest? Because I thought that because we were jivas, we're always, we're not manifested because we've always existed as part of Krishna. But in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 8, text 18, it does say, the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest from the unmanifest state. So I was a bit confused by that.
Okay, so manifest and unmanifest is referring to the body. So the soul is always in existence. Just means that the body is not manifest. Like, for example, my sister, she's about to become pregnant. She doesn't know yet. So that soul that's traveled into her womb is in an unmanifest state, meaning that the soul is there, but a body hasn't been created for it yet. So that's what it means by avyakta or unmanifest.
Thank you, Mataji.